I hear a phrase being thrown around today, and it's the phrase post-Christian culture. This phrase was initially used to describe cultural hubs. Think New York, London, LA, San Francisco. But post-Christian culture, as it has grown, that moniker has been more and more frequently used to describe cities like Kansas City, and even suburbs outside of metropolitan areas like Kansas City. Implicit in that phrase, post-Christian, is the understanding that we are living in a culture that has rejected Christianity, and in fact that our culture has moved beyond it. But is this really true? There's this sociologist, Philip Rieff, and he developed a paradigm called first, second, and third culture. The first culture is the understanding that before Christianity, think pre-Christianity, the world was very deeply shaped by spirituality. The second culture is a culture dominated by the formation and the progression of Christianity. And after that second culture comes a third culture. And this is our moment. And this third culture defines itself against the second culture. In the third culture, there's this rebellion against the second culture. And this is the part that we often miss in naming our moment and our culture as post-Christian. We actually don't live in a culture that has rejected Christianity. And our culture has not moved beyond it or even left it behind. What it's trying to do is deconstruct what has come before. And Rieff says, actually, our culture is trying to continue on with the same vision while forgetting its source. In other words, we're trying to run on with the project of Christianity without Christ at the center of that effort. Mark Sayers is a pastor in Melbourne, Australia, and he says people living in the post-Christian West want the kingdom without the king. We want the benefits of Christianity without Christ the King at the center of our lives and vision. The kingdom of God was a social vision. When we think of a social vision, we often think in terms of left and right because we live in the West. That's not what Jesus was getting at. He actually wasn't even considering those categories. Many of the values of the kingdom of God, think justice, peace, equality, they're all at the core of what post-Christian culture is and what it wants, both on the left and on the right. In both of these places, we can find the benefits of the kingdom while still rejecting the king. We want the kingdom without the king. Here are some questions that we need to be asking ourselves as we seek to faithfully follow Jesus in our moment. In our day to day, what does it look like to represent the kingdom with the king in a culture that wants the kingdom without the king? What does it look like to pledge allegiance to King Jesus first before all else? What does it look like to be a public citizen of God's kingdom and keeping the king at the center? If you're interested in learning more about this cultural analysis, I encourage you to read the book Disappearing Church by Pastor Mark Sayers, or even listen to the first season of the podcast called This Cultural Moment with Mark Sayers and John Mark Comer.